So here we go. This is the Medal of Honor Day. We've talked about our legacy here, and we did that yesterday with 4 great seminars, and we're not done with the seminar series, and certainly today we'll reinforce that. We had a great session yesterday, a Gold Star luncheon, and we remembered our sacrifices. And today's purpose is to honor our heroes, because through our heroes we set a standard for this regiment, and we all seek to achieve that, which makes us ready on the day. So today, first up in the pop, Sergeant Major Matt Williams. He's going to talk about Shok Valley, and it's all up to him. I'll give a little more of an introduction when we go to the picnic this afternoon. That said, I'm going to get it turned over to him, and then right after him, we'll have a little break, call out some raffle numbers from these Jiffy posters, get reset, and I've got Master Sergeant Earl Plumley. Now, here's the neat thing about Matt. He is just gave up a company sergeant major job down in 3rd Special Forces Group, and they moved him up to SWIC. He got SWIC'd. So he's and he's the operations sergeant major for the 4th Battalion Special Warfare Training Group. That's the one that puts our people through the pipeline. He's in an awesome position, and there may be greater things in store for him. And with that, Matt, the podium is yours.
All right, thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. So like Chris said, I'm Matt Williams, Sergeant Major, formerly from 3rd Group, currently serving in SWIC for my 2nd tour. I 4th Battalion Operations Sergeant Major, so 4th Battalion, 1st Special Warfare Training Group is currently our pipeline, so getting to learn the pipeline, see what it is that we do and how we make Green Berets, so looking forward to the next couple of years over there. Today we're going to start talking about the Battle of Shok Valley, ODA 396 or 3336, depending on what year you want to talk about it. And it's a story mainly about an ODA and how we came together in dire straits to kind of overcome insurmountable odds and kind of put the cart before the horse, make everybody made it home from this ordeal. So the first thing we're going to do, I'm going to ask Chris to go to the next slide, and we're going to listen to a teammate and fellow Medal of Honor recipient, Ron Schur, talk about this operation from his perspective.
I just think that service has been something I just felt was important. I don't know if it's just growing up in a military family and just knowing that something bigger than yourself is important. It's not just about you. It's about the country as a whole. It's about family. When you're in the military, it's about the team, the unit, just finding value. But I don't know why. It's always just made sense to me. It's always what I've done.
Flight of fire, shoot 1 minute inbound. Roger. We have my ball launch. Start now, push down the alley.
A few minutes in, as we started to move up, saw a couple people running around on top of the hill, and then just a few moments later, just felt like everything exploded around us. There was small arms fire coming, felt like from every direction. RPGs were coming down. Everybody just kind of started to find a place to seek cover. Just a couple minutes into it, then that's when I first heard the calls for help. Quickly gathered up my stuff, moved through the river, started moving up the hill. Dylan was already complaining that his leg didn't feel like it was straight, which kind of made me worried that it had hit his pelvis or his femur and done a lot of damage in there. as I was working on the patients, you could still just constantly feel the bullets going by. That little crest was constantly being hit with bullets, and you were getting the dust kicked up in your face, and it's just a constant reminder that that was not a safe position. That we needed to try and stabilize everybody as quickly as possible, and then get them out of there. Just started using some called Celox powder, hemostatic agent, to try and stop bleeding. I just made the call to pour that on his wound as best I could, and then just use my fingers to just shove it in and try and get some kind of control, because the wound was so high up that I couldn't get a tourniquet on it. I couldn't really get a lot of pressure on it well. Because I was working on Dylan in the capacity I could, I couldn't get over to him right away, so I just directed the guys, somebody to get a tourniquet on his leg. Ran out to him, checked on him. He was okay as you can be after having been shot. So he immediately got back in the fight. So I tried to figure out what had just happened to me. It felt like I'd been hit in the head with a baseball bat. Kind of just quickly tried to check myself, figure out what was going on, but I knew Scott needed help. I think he said something to the effect of, "They won't die going this way." So it was just the best call we had. So I just started getting everybody ready for the move down. So I'd check everything again, check all the bandages, check everything, then send them to Dave.
Hey, that's a good copy. We have the wires.
Once everybody was on, I went back, found my little commando squad, and got back in the fight until it was time to leave. There was still a few more casualties that we kind of had to address, but nothing was as severe as what we had up on the hill. Kind of tried to give a little bit of the story without giving away too much.
I can tell you that as an Army wife, when your husband calls you, you can tell the difference when you're saying "I love you," when it's a "I love you," and in case this is the last time I get to say it. I was scared enough that I got Cameron, my 4-month-old. I was like, we're leaving the house, because I didn't want to sit around the house all day waiting for a knock on my door. I figured that if they came to knock, they would be there when I got back. She had a rundown of the men who were injured and sort of how they were doing, that they were doing okay. And then she was like, I haven't heard anything about Ron, so that probably means he's fine. In my mind, she wouldn't have heard anything about him if he didn't make it, because they wouldn't have released that until they contacted me. Thankfully, it was only about a half an hour or so after that before Ron was able to call me. And so I had already heard that stuff happened, but hearing from him, hearing he was okay, that was definitely amazing. One of the first things he said was that everybody did amazing, everybody did their jobs, and they all worked together, and that's how everybody on the team was able to make it out that day.
Well, I was told that I'm getting the Medal of Honor, and it's my name that's out there right now. This award wouldn't exist without the team. I'm not a hero. I happened to be the medic there that day. The guys trusted me to help them, and I was gonna do everything I could to not let them down.
Okay. So yeah, just kind of a brief introduction there from a teammate, a friend, and a mentor of mine, Ron Schur, who, as you saw in the video, was awarded the Medal of Honor as well for the mission of Shok Valley on April 6, 2008, and subsequently passed from cancer. So unfortunately, he can't be here today to discuss it. So I thought it was important to hear what he had to say about the operation and kind of hopefully put some things into context as we go through it. Now I'll move to the next slide. This is just a map so that you don't have to look at me the whole time. But it kind of, the important thing here is that it depicts where the Shok Valley is in the Hindu Kush Mountains of northeastern Afghanistan. And if you go back and look at the history of the war in Afghanistan, you'll notice in that area there, Kunar, Pisa, Panjshir, Nuristan, actually accounts for most of the Medal of Honors received or awarded for the war itself. I think actually Earl's like one of the only outliers in a slightly different place, but not too far off. So, as I mentioned, this is going to just be kind of a discussion, a talk, a lot of question and answer here shortly about ODA 396 or ODA 3336 and the Battle of Shok Valley, April 6, 2008. So, I'm going to start with a little bit of how we got to where we were, the operation itself, and where we went from there. I was very fortunate. I'm an 18 X-ray. I joined the Army to be a Green Beret. I had no other choices or backup plan. All I wanted to do was be an SF guy. I was in college when 9/11 happened, and that really changed the course of my life. I started to kind of look into what was out there, what was available to serve. I was pursuing a degree in criminal justice and wanted to be in the FBI. And I found the 18 X-ray program, and I learned and studied and researched the Green Berets and what that mission was, what the mission set is, what Deo Presso Libere actually means. And that really connected with me personally. I thought it was a worthy cause and something that, it's worth our time and effort and a valuable way to serve our country. So that's what I did. Fortunately, I made it through the Q course and was successful there, and immediately assigned to 3rd Special Forces Group, which is where I wanted to go. At that time in 2006, 2007, 3rd Group was one of the most deployed units in the regiment, and I signed up to go serve, in that capacity. So I remember checking into the company sergeant major, who I literally met one time, and that was it. Said, hey, you're going to ODA 396. Walked me down the hall, opened the door. Master Sergeant Scott Ford, who some of you may know, he'll be here later in the week, welcomed me to the team as only he can do. And I immediately saw that this team was a very cohesive unit of individuals that had trained hard and prepared for the mission they were about to undergo. He told me that day, I think it was October 2nd, it was the day before my birthday actually, and that's why I remember it, but he told me, we're leaving for Afghanistan in 2 weeks. And I was like, okay. I didn't know what that meant, other than we were going to Afghanistan. So luckily, that's how I was welcomed onto an ODA, and I learned very quickly from these guys, and they did what I think is the right thing. They brought me under their wing. They knew they didn't have time to mess around, to haze and paint my helmet red and do all this silly nonsense. We had a mission to do, and we were given the mission of the first operational Kandak of commandos in Afghanistan at the time. So this unit had just been stood up, just been trained, tested once or twice, and then we were charged with going to take them and operate throughout the country, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But immediately I saw what an ODA was, and I continue to look back on this throughout my career, and I've learned a lot of lessons from this one period of time, about 1 year out of my 17-year career. And Ron was one of the first to kind of bring me in. He was one of 2 medics on the team. He showed me what it's about. He told me what to pack. You know, I was literally a new guy out of the Q course. I don't know what, you know, they're like, here's tough boxes. I was like, okay, what do I put in all these boxes? And these guys helped me out and brought me to the country, and we immediately understood what our job was and started to train. That's how Scott had raised this team and made them, and we continued to do that when we got down there. Our whole goal was to do basic tactics with a commando Kandak in Afghanistan and fly around the country and do what we were charged with doing. And we did that a few times. We went to Kandahar, Tagab, but most of our time was spent out in the east in Jalalabad. So, moving forward, we received this mission to go after a high-value HIG target, so Haji Ghafoor. So this guy had been kind of bed down in this area. His faction of Taliban terrorists, HIG, whatever you want to call it, had literally had owned this area forever. The Russians never ventured that way. British never ventured that way. This place was a safe haven for these folks. They practice a very distinct version of Islam, very strict, and they own the area. The problem was that they own the area. And we decided, the proverbial we, decided that wasn't good for us anymore. So we were charged with going in there. Our intelligence told us that it would be a relatively mild target. He was there, some of his security guys, they ran guns and stuff through the valley, no big deal. And so it was an interesting time for us, something that has changed slightly, but we were given our mission handed to us basically. So higher, you know, the air quotes higher, told us this is your mission, this is the intelligence, this is how you're going to do it. As all of you sitting in this room know, that's a terrible idea. But it was an interesting time for us back then. So 2007, 2008, the height of the war was one of the heights of the war in Afghanistan. And the goal from higher, again, was to prosecute as many targets as we could, as effectively as possible, while increasing the Afghanistan military's capacity. So they gave us this mission. And we started to kind of dig through this thing and look at it. And we were charged with an additional 2 ODAs and our commando Kandak, a battalion, so about 100 guys. We're charged with landing in this valley. One ODA, 3212, was going to secure it and provide us overwatch as we moved up through the mountain. And another ODA, 3225, was on the backside of the mountain assaulting a different portion of the village, just kind of there to provide support as well. Everything that we learned while digging this told us that this was not ideal. We were landing in the middle of the Hindu Kush Mountains, 10,000 feet above sea level, in a valley, charged with assaulting a village on top of a mountain. So the call-out box there that you see is relatively where we landed. And then that top left portion, right under the Shok Valley words there is, oh, I do have a pointer, sorry. It's kind of where our objective was up in this area here. And for all intents and purposes, Scott and Kyle, our team leader, pushed back. They did the best they could to look out for us, to speak on our behalf. But eventually, the time came we were told to go. And as you all know, we're going to go. So we loaded up in Chinook helicopters. Like I said, there was our team, we had about 15 guys, a couple attachments, enablers, and 100 Afghan commandos fly into the Shok Valley. The mission was pushed off that morning due to weather, and we were looking at weather coming in as well. So we had kind of a finite amount of time to get this thing done. And our higher, the way they understood the intelligence was that it would not be that big of a deal. So we land in the valley. The first thing I remember is looking off the back of a Chinook helicopter and seeing 10 feet of space and then the ground. And I distinctly looked at the crew chief, and he kind of shook his head, kind of said, sorry for you, well, this is as low as we're going. So we jump out of the back of this helicopter. People spilling all over the place, commandos, us, gear everywhere, and that's how we started this whole entire day. We police ourselves up, get into our order of movement, try to maintain as much tactical discipline as possible, and then we see what our actual objective is, and it's daunting. So we moved through the valley itself. We were broken down in 3 elements. We had our lead kind of assault element, our command and control element, and then I was in the rear with Ron, the medic, Scott, our team sergeant, Seth, one of our snipers, and a bunch of commandos. That day I was charged with the heavy weapons squad, so I had a full complement of machine guns, which I was happy about, but it proved to not work out that well. So we moved through. John Walding, Dave Sanders were in lead element. They made it almost to the mouth of the village, and the command and control element was about halfway up, and then our element was in the back. And we were in the bottom of the valley, surrounded on all sides, and that's when the world exploded. RPGs, sniper rounds, machine gun fire, the full, everything you can imagine started pouring down, not just on our location, but the whole entire valley itself. And where we were, it felt like we were literally surrounded on 360 degrees and being shot at from all angles. So it took about a good couple minutes, a good tactical pause to really see what was going on and where we were actually being ambushed from. So it turns out we were being ambushed from the village itself. And not only was Haji Ghafoor there, but Gulbuddin Hekmatyar was there as well. He was the commander of the HIG at the time, and he had estimated 150 to 200 fighters with him. Something that we learned after the fact, I'm going to apologize if anybody here is an Apache pilot, was we had a lead-in of Apache helicopters, and we saw their video footage later showed these guys receiving orders from their squad leader, literally moving out in squad formations with a full complement of weapons and material, prepared for us to come in as they heard the helicopters arriving. I think this was passed on the radio. E5 Matt Williams never heard it. I just felt the effects of it after the fact. And I say that to say that unfortunately, we walked into this situation kind of knowing the deal before we got there, or not knowing. Anyway, so we move up right into the midst of the firefight. Ryan Wallen, one of our 18 Echoes, took an RPG close enough to cause a concussion. It was like his 3rd concussion of the trip, so we weren't that worried about it, and we just kind of let him do what he does. And we heard over the radio that we had 2 wounded about halfway up the mountain, and that was Dylan Bear, who you heard Ron speak about, who was shot in the hip, basically right in the middle of his hip. So it pretty much exploded his hip in place, and had a lot of internal bleeding. And for anybody in here that has experienced something like that, that's a life-threatening injury immediately. And then Luis Morales was wounded while rendering aid to Dylan. So the enemy had fixed that position pretty well, and Ron was the only medic on the ground. So Scott called Ron immediately and said, hey, we gotta go. Me being kind of new to the team and a little bit gung-ho, and knowing I had my heavy weapons squad with me, I told Scott, hey, I'll come with you and at least help provide security the best I can. So that's how we started. We moved up the mountain itself. Ron immediately got up there, started assessing casualties, and this is the first time that I saw what 18 Deltas are capable of, and it was truly awe-inspiring. And later on, when I found out that Ron received the Medal of Honor for his actions, it was all too obvious that he deserved it. He didn't think. He immediately started acting, directing traffic. He was one medic with a small aid bag, and as we unpack this, we'll see that he kind of changed the way a lot of trauma combat medicine is taught. He provided a lot of lessons learned back to the SOCOM community after the fact, and did a lot of great things after this was all said and done. Anyway, he started treating patients, dealing with what he saw in front of him. Scott, Kyle, and I started to take stock of our situation and see what it was we could actually do. there was a small building, a little outcropping of building in the bottom of the valley that we thought maybe would provide a good casualty collection point for these guys. But ultimately, we wanted to continue our assault, move forward, get into the village, establish a foothold, and do the best we could to start moving forward and gaining an opportunity to provide ourselves our own security. So meanwhile, while this is going on, our combat controller, Zach Reiner, brand new guy, first mission, our first deployment, had to shake the cobwebs off a little bit, and then he started directing air and was pretty much flawless at it once he got it going, and we'll talk more about that too. So me and Scott and Kyle decided, hey, we're going to try to get these guys into the village. We're going to try and get into a building, provide security, move forward, get our wounded treated, and move on with this operation. I was charged with going back down the mountain, which was a terrace-stepped mountain the whole entire way. So, you know, I forgot the elevation change, but there was, the way these people got into the village by horse and carriage and got water up to the village was through these terrace steps. I was charged with going about halfway down to gain, you know, get some more guys, get some more commandos, get a couple more team guys up there, and move these wounded guys down to this house. While Scott kind of, you know, was looking at the tactical situation on the ground and figuring out what exactly we're gonna do. As I began to do that, I called for Seth. He came up, and then we hear on the radio we had 2 more wounded guys. And those guys, it was Scott. He was shot in the chest, as the video mentioned earlier, but in the arm as well. His arm was almost amputated immediately. It was his left arm. He's left-handed. So that was a problem for him. He got a tourniquet on. He was the most mobile and kind of the most stable casualty at the point. John Walding was shot in the leg. He was hit in the shin by something big enough to basically amputate his leg as well. It was, you know, his leg was hanging on by a couple threads. And we were able to get, you know, he got a tourniquet on him. And now we had 3 very unmobile casualties in a very precarious situation that the enemy knew exactly where we were. So I went back up to their location for the second time, and that's where I retrieved Scott. He was mobile enough. I got him down and passed him off to Seth, who moved him down the bottom mountain, and then Seth came back to my location, again about halfway up. And that's where Seth and I spent a little bit of time kind of figuring out what we were going to do. So our team sergeant was wounded. Our main element at this point was pinned down by heavy machine gun fire, etc. And we had 3 critically wounded casualties that could not physically move. So Seth and I, we communicated a little bit. We had kind of an effective position for a while, and the enemy pinpointed us again. And with a strafe from machine gun fire that landed all around Seth and I, we decided it was time to do something else. And we gathered up our commandos and our interpreter, and we said, hey, listen, you know, you guys provide cover fire and then move with us. We're going to go up here, and we're going to get these guys down dead or alive. We hadn't been able to raise them on the radio for at least an hour or so, and we kind of feared the worst, but we knew, you know, we knew we had to go up there and get them. It was a non-starter. We were going up there. We were coming down with them no matter what their situation was. So we look at our guys. We give them instructions. And as every good commando does, they blew us off. And Seth and I looked at each other and said, all right, we're going to go. So we made a move, looked back, and turns out it's just Seth and I. Seth begins to climb where I'd gone up a couple times, and I grabbed him, and I was like, no, you can't do that, man. And we were fortunate enough to find a little cliff space to crawl, to climb, kind of free climb hand over hand, laterally, and reach an outcropping of rocks that led to the backside of where our guys are pinned down. Luckily, when we got around there, they were still alive. They were doing well. Our captain, obviously, broke his radio, as they do. So he throws this SATCOM radio at me, and I was a brand new 18 Bravo, and he said, fix it. And I was like, okay. Luckily, we were a well-trained team, and I opened up the radio and looked at it. It had dropped ComSec. So that was the one thing I did remember from our cross training. It was about a 5-second fix. gave him his radio back, and he got to get back to captaining. And we, during that time, our combat controller was still dropping bombs and doing the best he could, and we'll get to kind of his statistics here in a minute because they're pretty overwhelming. Seth pushed forward a little bit with a sniper rifle, started providing cover fire. Meanwhile, Dave Sanders, as the video stated, Dave and Mike Carter, our combat cameraman of all people, had found an alternate route down the backside of this mountain. We were prepping casualties and started to move them. We were able to get these guys down the backside of the mountain effectively and pull back everybody. And at the end of the day, shortly thereafter, collected our wits about us, got all of our gear. 3212, the other ODA, had made it to our location, and we were able to exfil. So our exfil was again very treacherous. As you saw in the video, those Black Hawk helicopters, that was real footage actually. These guys came in, we had a pilot shot up, several helicopters shot up, but these guys literally saved our guys' lives. They flew in, they landed, they should not have. There was high wires running across the valley, machine gun fire, like I said, a wounded pilot. They landed and let us load our wounded, and they got those guys out of there. And they are absolutely, along with a couple other people, credited with those guys, saving those guys' lives, for sure. The rest of us, we made it back out, flew home, and then life kind of went on. So at the end of the day, we had four critically wounded Americans. Again, Master Sergeant Scott Ford shot in the chest, the arm, Dylan Bear shot in the hip, Luis Morales shot in the leg, and well, actually a couple times in the leg, and John Wayne Walling was shot in the leg as well. That led to John having an amputated leg. Luis later removed his ankle, has a prosthetic now, and he's doing great. Dylan had a full hip replacement and was snowboarding in 7 months. And Scott's continuing to progress and make recovery and doing great things. And like I said, he'll be here later this week. We lost a couple commandos, and one of our friends and interpreters, CK, was killed on the operation pretty much immediately as well. But we were able to bring him home and provide him a proper memorial. So we finished up, and the Army decided that we did good stuff, and that they put us in a not so good situation. We were awarded 10 Silver Stars, the team. So most of the ODA, and then Mike Carter, our combat carryman, the only combat carryman ever to receive a Silver Star. And then Zach Reiner was awarded the Air Force Cross a few months later for his actions as well. And then life went on, and that was in 2008. 2018, our lives got changed again 10 years later. Ron, who was working for the Secret Service at the time on the counter-assault team detail at the White House, was actually called into the president's office. And President Trump told him he was being awarded the Medal of Honor for his actions that day during the Battle of Shok Valley. And shortly thereafter, I received phone calls, very cryptic and a weird story, but received phone calls from the Army, and then the President as well, telling me that my award had been upgraded also. So it brought everything back from 10 years prior. And the team got to get together again. We got to watch Ron get his medal. We got to watch Ron do great things for a couple years with his medal with cancer. And again, he got to be a mentor and a friend to me and teach me what it was like to be a Medal of Honor recipient. At the end of the day, I'll kind of get back to our stats here and ask for the next slide, please. So as I mentioned, 10 Silver Stars, 2 upgraded the Medal of Honor, 1 Air Force Cross, but what I still find fascinating, and I still look at these numbers every time I see them, but this is the amount of ordnance that was used that day to get us off that mountain. Roughly 50 attack runs, 4,000 cannon rounds, 9 Hellfire missiles, 162 rockets, around a dozen 500-pound bombs, and one, that's not a 12,000-pound bomb, excuse me, that's a typo, that's one 2,000-pound bomb. The interesting thing about the 2,000-pound bomb was was that the pilots that dropped it, it was called in danger close. I don't need to explain what that means to anybody in this room, but they dropped this bomb thinking that the worst was possible. We have audio and video of it, actually, and unfortunately I couldn't find it to put in here, but the pilots themselves literally knew they had to do this. They thought that they killed us when they did it, and then they found out that they didn't. And I say that to say that it's a testament to the men, the women, everybody that still serves our country, and the sheer ability that they have to do their job. And them having that ability to make that decision and do that against what they thought was possible is the reason that I'm standing here today, and that the rest of these guys have moved on with their lives as well. Anyway, so that's kind of a wrap up of the battle itself, what the team went through, and how I learned what it was to be a Green Beret. I've been very fortunate to continue my career. Like I said, I'm a sergeant major now. The Army decided to do that, which is probably a mistake, but they'll get it anyway. So if we can, I'd like to move on to kind of a few questions, open forum discussion. Obviously talk about the mission, talk about the men, talk about the guys, talk a little bit about SWIC. Might have to turn the camera off.
I got the first question. So Matt, I would like for you, if you could, and we live in a mountainous terrain here, foothills. When you say you went up and you climbed back up, please describe for us the terrain and the physical difficulties of moving and operating and communicating in that terrain.
Thanks. Actually, that's a good question and a great point. So this is something that we as a team had to learn throughout the course of this deployment. So Scott, and like I said, he'll be here later, so you can talk to him about it, and he can call me when he's mad. But he came from the Criffs of old. So running around Iraq, ICTF days, 100,000 magazines and grenades and 7,000 pounds of crap, because they were in and out and they did what they had to do. And that was a mentality that he brought to the team, and we had a very robust packing list when we started this deployment. Our first mission that we ever did, we flew into Shok Valley, and the first day was easy. Flew in, knocked out a target, our trucks met us, and we were good. Ronned overnight, and then we were supposed to spend the rest of the week basically clearing this whole entire valley, just kind of walking through the village and announcing our presence. And we realized that packing list was not sustainable. So the point is that as we learned Afghanistan, as we learned the terrain and what it meant to operate in that, it taught us a lot about how we had to carry ourselves. So by the time we got to this mission, we knew we were going into a treacherous terrain, and we carried what we had to, but it was still constantly difficult. So we were operating at 4,000 or 5,000 feet in JBET, I think, and then moving up to 10,000 feet, and it's like that. It's as you get out of the helicopter, you're there. There's no acclimatization, obviously. And these back to the map. The elevation change itself was staggering, and what I still find fascinating, I think about this all the time, was how these people lived. I mean, the steps themselves, the terrace terrain, was you move up, and it's still a hand-over-hand climb, 5, 10, 12 feet, depending on where you're at, to the next level, and then you move up, and then you move up, and that was what we were dealing with. And the rest of it is sheer rock face, sliding rocks, dirt, pretty treacherous terrain all around. So it's not a very stable operating environment, and it proved very, very difficult to move casualties. So if you weren't prepared for it, and obviously we weren't prepared for 4, we kind of had to innovate on the fly, but it changed the discussion of how we move casualties, what gear we bring with us to do it, because you can find yourself in that situation, especially in that country, at a moment's notice.
Thanks, Sergeant Major. We got a question right here. Daniel, if you could pan over.
Hey, Matt, Sergey French, you know me, I know you. I know Scotty's position. at least several years ago on the issue, so I'm not gonna, I'd like to hear your position on leadership courage. I know Scotty pushed back really hard, and anybody who knows Scotty Ford, he's pretty vociferous about it. You guys, to my understanding, were supposed to assault down and being inserted higher than the target. And when it switched and you had to assault up, my understanding that Scotty's position and captain's position was that is idiotic and it shouldn't have been done. What do you think? First of all, I know what Scotty thought or told me, who told them just shut up and move. But what do you think about leadership courage and leadership courage to make the hard decision to push back on practically disastrous orders?
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, and the second one, if you could highlight the egress and Walding's, you mentioned about his injury, but you kind of skipped how he was moving down.
Yeah, you know, that's probably one of the hardest things to think about, but even harder to action is leadership courage, right? So, and I found myself in leadership positions. Luckily, I've never had to make that exact call, but I'll credit Kyle and Scott both for literally standing on the man's desk saying this is a bad idea. You know, I don't need to rehash 7-8 of the Ranger Handbook to tell everybody in this room that that was a terrible plan. There's really no bones about it. It is what it is. And at the end of the day, like I said, we were told to do it. It's easy to armchair quarterback that and say, you know, what are we going to do? Knock on the helicopters? But we had a mission to do, right? And we owed it to ourselves. We owed it to the commandos. We owed it to the training and the amount of effort that we put in to go do this thing, whether we agree with it or not. And that's my perspective from E5 Matt Williams, right? Sergeant Major Matt Williams. You know, I would like to think that you know, times have changed a bit, and candor is a little bit more accepted in our community. And like I mentioned earlier, that this was a different time. We were given our mission. We were given the intel that we were told what we were going to do, which is not ideal. And things have changed, but that's also something that we as leaders and future Green Berets and you know, ex-Green Berets have to understand. We have to drive that narrative and get back to the point where our command elements, our team sergeants, and our captains have the tactical and technical understanding and ability to know when it's right to do something and when it's not. The war in Afghanistan changed that quite a bit for us. So there's some people in this room that I'm sure would be happy to tell you, you know, Roger, Drew, some of these other folks, that they operated with autonomy as team leaders and young Green Berets. And that environment changed because of the way Afghanistan was. And my personal opinion and belief is that we need to kind of get back to that as best that we can and understand that we are training and developing professional soldiers, and we need to treat them professionally and give them the opportunity to be those professionals, right? Unfortunately, I've got stripes and a star and I don't make policy, but that's my opinion, you know, on it. The John thing, obviously, it's funny. You know, he didn't have the best ride down. I'm sure a lot of people have seen his story. You know, his leg was basically amputated, flapping all over the place. He was able to secure it, made his way down, and then we got him on a helicopter, and he's better for it, I think. Yes, sir.
My name is Robert H. Simmons. And I was wondering I'd like to know about the equipment treatment. I'd like to know about the equipment and what you're carrying in this rough terrain, because I was kind of wondering, because when we got ambushed, we ran out of ammo. And I was wondering how much ammo you're carrying and how you was resupplied in this type of terrain.
Yes, sir. So as I mentioned, we had really kind of slimmed down our situation as much as we could, especially for this operation. So individually, we were carrying 4 magazines, a couple of grenades, radios, and med kit basically, and water. We were really, really light. And the reason we were able to do that specifically was that we operated with the Afghan commandos, and the Afghan commandos operated with M4s as well. And so we had an immediate resupply anytime we needed it. These guys, they were more adept at the terrain, and some of them would just refuse to not carry anything less than 8, 10 magazines. And it was something that we actually had that conversation and took that into account, that we had a roaming resupply with us at all times. Aside from that, we did have an aerial resupply on call that was actually hovering overhead the whole entire time. So our AOB Sergeant Major was on a bird, or actually 2 birds, and they had what we call speedballs and ammo resupply and all that ready to go. They actually did insert at the end of the operation and came in, but we, as long as that mission took, and as much ordnance was dropped and as much shooting was going on, we never really had an actual issue with ammo. Even Seth had we had Carl Gustav was in the formation, and we had commandos carrying rounds for that. We had commandos carrying RPGs, and even Seth with the sniper rifle was able to actually carry enough ammunition to sustain himself throughout the whole entire mission.
At the beginning, you mentioned that you had a patchy video before everything started of what they were all preparing to do and getting ready to go. I'd like for you to unpack that and say what was done with that information. Why didn't the Apache and his buddies smoke all those folks right at that time? Unpack that for us, if you would. The second thing I'd like for you to define a little better was, this was a bad idea, the way the command and the orders came down, but you say things have changed. How are things different now when a job has to be done? How is the respect being given to the people who have to do the job? How are things different? So those are the 2 questions.
To the first one, I wish I could unpack it more, but I wasn't an Apache pilot and nothing was done. So had it been done, maybe I probably wouldn't be standing here. But it's one of those things that it's a hindsight, a Monday morning quarterbacking thing, right? We see this video, the information got passed through the helicopter channels, and back then it was, the team leader had a radio connected, and that was about it. So the information was known, it just wasn't successfully passed through the formation as well as it probably could have been or should have been. Also, again, I was an E5, so maybe it did, and I just didn't really get it. But that's one of those things, like, do I wish that they would have made that engagement and changed the course of the whole entire operation? Of course I do. I think that, again, everything that we do is looked at and scrutinized, and we learn from it. And then your second question, I say things have changed quite a bit. There's a lot of folks in this room that have commanded at echelon, specifically in Afghanistan. General Gilliam is one, and I'm sure you can speak to this too, but I think that we started to understand and look at what it meant to build targets from the ground up, and take kind of the team's input and initiative on what they were doing. And we saw the way that we changed the style of operations that we did in Afghanistan. We still operate with the commandos. We built that out to six battalions, running around all over the country and doing those high-level targets. But we also understood too, like, what it actually meant to get back to the ground level and do some of this engaging with the population, building your own information and targets and sources and that kind of stuff as well. And if there's anybody that would like to highlight or deviate from that, I'd appreciate it.
Right over here on this side.
Hey, Sergeant Major, quick question for you. Being a former Intel and NSF guy as well, I'm concerned about the comment that you shared up front, which was the Intel said it was going to be a low to medium target. Clearly that was not the case. Have you guys been able to unpack what was the Intel prior and right pre-assault? Was there any overhead platforms, any SIGINT platforms that would be able to tell you guys up front that, oh, by the way, there's yet another higher HVT target in place with additional fighters in place? Thanks.
No. So the intel that we got was it was what we had. We did have Pred overhead and you know, the target soaks and all that kind of stuff. SIGINT was, you know, it was 2008. Things have changed a lot over a very short amount of time in that world, and we kind of had what we had. Again, that's one of those like hindsight being 2020 things, right? Like, you know, a lot of things could have happened. Maybe things would have been different, but ultimately, what did happen was, you know, the Battle of Shok Valley, right? We did the assault on what we thought the intelligence was, and as an intel guy, you should know that sometimes you get it right, sometimes you don't. The best intel is what you see on the ground at the time, and you know, ours was different. Yes, ma'am. Oh, we got one here, Chris.
Hi, I'm Linda Weston. I'm from the North Texas, Chapter 31, and I have had the privilege to work the range with John Wayne Walding, and I want to thank y'all for everything you did to keep him alive so we could do great work in North Texas.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you, ma'am.
So I'm Paul Tompkins. I have a question for you personally. How has winning the Medal of Honor changed your life significantly? What was the most so significant thing that's changed?
Yep. Well, the SFA asked me to come and talk to all of you. They probably wouldn't have done otherwise. The biggest thing that's changed is frankly that it's given me an opportunity to hopefully engage with people and talk about the medal itself. I don't like talking about myself. I didn't earn this, right? This team, this mission that we went on, equated to the medal itself. And you know, like I said, I served in 3rd Special Forces Group. It was one of the most combat deployed units in the military, and there's people, you know, there's still people out there today that are doing amazing things. So I'm fortunate enough to have the opportunity to talk about our story, our team, and what it is to be a Green Beret and what the medal itself means. But I also have that distinct opportunity to hopefully engage with people that I wouldn't normally engage with and talk about, you know, what Green Berets do, what the U.S. Army Special Forces does, what 3rd Special Forces Group does and has done, you know, for our country and continues to do. So the biggest thing that's changed a lot is that I do, you know, I have the distinct opportunity to do this kind of stuff, frankly.
Yeah, Sergeant Major, I want to ask you to talk about yourself a little bit more. When I came into my first team in '89, our warrant officer sat me down and explained, we got 3 generations of guys on the team or in the company. You got the dinosaurs, the oldest guys, mostly Vietnam vets. Then you had the SF babies, and our team sergeant was an SF baby, and he was pretty good. But he warned me to watch out for a few of the others. Mm-hmm. And then you had the new guys like myself who were coming in. You know, about the time we had SFAS. Fast forward to 2002, SOCOM is deciding to add a 4th Battalion in the 18 X-ray program. And it wasn't a long, drawn-out decision. It was a pretty quick one. Mm-hmm. You being a product of that, an 18 X-ray, and today a Sergeant Major, can you comment on how you think the program's worked out?
You know, so a few things. I think the program's worked out pretty well. Currently now, our 18 X-ray population has surpassed our active Army population for going to the pipeline. You know, in 18 X-rays, we do have a lot to learn. The ones that are humble enough to understand that have done great things. I've got peers, I've got guys that are older that came before me that have outpaced my own career. Some of our best leaders in the regiment right now are our products of the 18 X-ray program. You know, because it ultimately depends on who you allow in and then how you train them. And I think that's one thing that we're continuing to evaluate and try to do the best job that we can. And then the team matters, right? Like, you know, everybody remembers a first team sergeant, good, bad, or indifferent. It is what it is. You just spoke about your warrant officer. It's ultimately the people. It doesn't really matter if you're an 18 X-ray, 11 Bravo, 13 Alpha, 92 Yankee, whatever. If you come to the pipeline and you go to a team that's been raised the right way, you're going to be a good SF guy, because that's our job. That's what we're supposed to do. But long story short, the X-ray program, I think it's paid dividends. It's done a lot of great things for the community, and I think it's going to continue to do that. And we're relying on it right now, frankly.
Could you give us information on how much planning time you had for this mission? You also talked about several others that you had done. Were you able to do direct coordination for air assets, for air support? And what was your ability to communicate with your commando counterparts? And then if you could, at the last question or last answer, do you know what the overall impact was in the area after you guys conducted that mission?
Yeah, so most of the time our planning timelines differed depending on where we were and what we were doing. We were down in Kandahar at one point, and literally due to weather, we had over a month to plan and prepare and train for this one operation that we were going to do. And a couple other times, there was a few weeks, kind of gather the intel, see what we're doing, figure out how we're going to do it, and go do it. But every time we did have the opportunity to, the best of our ability at least, liaise with our outside elements, do those kind of coordinations and things, speak with air crews, helicopter pilots. We always made it a very distinct point to bring them in to our plan and our back briefs and get their briefs as well. Hopefully face to face most of the time, which is what we try to do. And one thing that we relied heavily on was our combat controller, our CCT from the Air Force. And those guys have proved to be worth their weight in gold for that kind of stuff, and they've done a phenomenal job. And that frankly is a great program too. So, we did the best we could every time we could with those kind of things. Sorry, what was the last question?
What was the overall impact in the area?
Oh, the impact in the area, correct. I think that the biggest thing that we kind of proved at the end of the day was that we had that reach and capacity to go into there, and I think it made it tampered the area quite a bit. Like I mentioned earlier, if you look at the map and go back and do a little bit of looking into the war in Afghanistan itself, that region of the country produced almost all of our medals of honor for the whole entire campaign. But a lot of that was due to us going above and beyond, going places that nobody else went before, and just disrupting their ability to kind of live and operate. So I think we had some at least decent impacts for the time being. And then, as I'm sure you've seen the news, it's all gone to shit, but that's a different story.
Yeah, a year later, when the next ODA went back up into Nuristan, the chatter was, holy shit, the bearded ones are back, go to the hills. And so it was another huge battle. The guys got stuck up on the mountain. But I would tell you, Matt's team, that's probably that mission, but the worst mission they had to do, he didn't even talk about. Tell them about the road trip you had to take and about not wanting to do a mission that sucks.
You mean the surge mission, surge trip?
Oh, yeah.
So as Gillian mentioned, he was in Afghanistan as a SOTA commander. And our team got called up to go back on kind of a short notice deal. We were actually in Safawak. It was a Friday. Commissar Major called us up, say, you're going to Afghanistan. And we're like, cool, that's awesome. Like, a few months or what? He's like, no, next Friday. And we're like, okay. So legitimately, our team, and I think 6 others throughout their group deployed in a week to go to Afghanistan. And our team at this point, we're charged with a battalion of regular ANA. We're supposed to kind of train them up, get them ready to go, and we were in at Polisharki, a little fire base outside of Kabul. The same base that we were actually stationed just prior to. But this time we were the redheaded stepchild of the organization. You know, there was 2 teams already there. They were living everywhere, and we had to make do. Luckily, General Gilliam approved some of our op fund, and we built ourselves some place to live and all that kind of stuff, but that's a different story. So we train these guys up, and they call us up and they say, hey, this unit's going to be deployed out to Herat. So if you look at a map of Afghanistan, so you see, well, yeah, I'll show you. So Kabul is like right here, and Herat's all the way over there, and that's not to scale. So Afghanistan's huge, turns out. And they're like, hey, you're going to take these regular A&A guys that you've worked with for a few months, and you're going to drive them from Kabul to Herat. And we were like, you guys have already tried to do this to us once, right? We were just here 6 months ago, and you guys tried to kill the whole team. Are you serious? And they were like, yeah. So luckily, Kyle Walton, our team leader, learned a lot about leadership courage, and he wasn't going to take no for an answer. And I think we basically had every theater level asset that you could have, and we made this 2-mile long convoy from there to there. It took, I think, 5 days roughly, stops along the way. So it was over 100 Humvees, all their equipment and all their stuff, and we were in the MATVs at the time. And the craziest part of it was this was so well planned, frankly, and equipped that the worst thing that happened was a commando fell asleep and rolled a Humvee. We made it all the way out there to Herat, no real issues, and it was literally that. It was the worst mission I ever did, frankly. I was just trapped in a truck for 5 days.
My question is, what was your mission, number 1? Number 2 is, how many men did you have? And number 3, do I understand that you all got 20 Silver Stars awarded?
So the mission was literally a capture kill. So a capture kill of a high value target in eastern Afghanistan. So Haji Ghafoor, like I said, was our target. He was just a weapons and a minerals smuggler, kind of a whole host of things. And that was literally it. That's what we were charged with doing. We had 100 Afghan commandos. My ODA plus enablers was about 17, and there was two of our sister ODAs were in the general vicinity of the operation as well. And we were awarded, it was 10 Silver Stars and an Air Force Cross at the end of the day. And then 2 of those Silver Stars have been upgraded to the Medal of Honor after the fact. All right.
Major, we're going to wrap this.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, what a phenomenal presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And before I give you the Jiffy certificate, in your presence and company today, we have 4 recipients of the Medal of Honor. 2 originals joined SF, came in 52. They were in here. Several distinguished members of the Special Forces Regiment are in here right now. What a great company of men for you to give this presentation to.
Absolutely.
All right. So there's your Nito Gito, and I'll take it back from you. I'll give it to you again at the Medal of Honor picnic we're doing here at the Flying W soon. There's your Jiffy coin. You get your coin on a flash. Let me have those back. Okay.
Thank you, everybody.